Hi, everyone.
Hi.
Hi, welcome to this week's Paideia in the Know. I'm so excited to have Jacqui with us. So she is Paideia's social photo editor, and actually just our photo editor at large. And prior to that, we worked together at E! So Jacqui, you are so amazing. You do such incredible work. We're so excited to have you as a part of the team. Tell me, can you, just for people who may not know you, can you tell us a little bit about your resume and kind of what you've done and what you've worked on in the past, and maybe a little bit about what you're doing now?
Yeah, I'd love to. So I started out over in the UK studying photography, and that was kind of old school photography where, you have the Hasselblad cameras that you look in and everything's upside down.
Yes.
So the classic old school stuff. And then I moved over to LA probably about 10 years ago, which is where I started working at E! with you. And so Amy and I worked on the style department at E! Fashion and beauty, and my role there was to basically curate all of the visual assets. A lot of that was working with Amy, visual assets for digital video, and then also working on the social media sites, Instagram, Twitter, Facebook. And now what I do is work with companies just like Paideia Media, helping them to develop the visual side of their branding, kind of communicating visual communications. So
Perfect.
that's it.
Perfect. Yeah, just slide slightly closer and you'll be good to go. All right, so let's just dive in because we have much going on today. So why do you feel it's so important to visually brand yourself, especially on platforms like Instagram?
So it's really, really important, I think, now more than ever to visually brand yourself. It's partly to do with the way that our culture just is at the moment. People get their cues from visuals very, very fast. If you look at big companies like Netflix, Home Depot, they're all investing massively in their visual communications departments. So I think, using them as a guide, any smaller business needs to take that and follow the lead. The power about it, I think, is that you can communicate so much more than sort of like the top line of your bio. Something like your company, Amy, is obviously a bespoke digital media company, but you're also so much more than that. You're a leader of women, you empower other women, you're a teacher, and I think that your social feeds and the other parts of your digital media are a chance to really kind of tell your story and hone your identity.
And I do think that that's something that larger companies do quite well because they have an entire team of people that's just focusing on that all day. That's it. That's all they do. And as a smaller business, it can be tough to harness some of that. What do you think are kind of the key elements to explore when you're trying to get a handle on doing that for yourself?
So I think the place to start is to think about what story you want to tell, what's your narrative, what's your identity, and using that as kind of your base point. You need to create a kind of a visual signature for yourself. So an identity that speaks to who you are, but something that can be cohesive across all of the different platforms. So you don't want to necessarily tell the exact same story on, say, Twitter that you do on Instagram, but you also need them to be cohesive, and using the visuals as the main point for that is a great way to kind of have consistency across all of your platforms.
I love that. Visual signature is the key word of the day. That's really good. I'm into it. All right. So what are 3 critical elements to consider when developing that visual branding for your business or that visual signature?
And I think let's see, from the purely visual point, I think you need to have something like a tonal range or a subject matter which is always consistent. So for you, we've gone for this kind of beautiful kind of heather, lavender, desaturated purple, which kind of is sophisticated, but at the same time still feminine without being overpoweringly so. And so I think, have a look at your brand, have a look at your feeds and see what you do consistently, what you really like about the images and the visual style that you already have, and pull that together into kind of the tonal ranges, the perspectives that you're using. Yeah, I've lost track of it.
I will say something I love about the color scheme, because it's something that, we really worked on early on, is that when you're scrolling through Instagram, it looks different than everything else that's going on. You know, it doesn't look like everything else in your feed, and it visually kind of makes you stop to look at it.
Right, you stand out against your competitors and about people that maybe have not put quite so much thought into what they're doing. So I think that comes across really quickly when you do start to pay attention to, especially with Instagram, and put an effort into it. It shows very, very quickly.
Yeah, which is nice.
I think the other thing to really take into account when you're developing the visuals for your brand is how potentially they're going to grow over kind of like as your business grows. So you want to give yourself a starting point, but you also want to give yourself room to kind of to grow and develop. And you might not necessarily have the equipment to hire a photographer to do shoots, but you would like to leave yourself room to kind of like let that sort of thing develop.
Totally. And I know that you wanted to talk a little bit about copywriting.
Yeah, so there are a couple of cases going on at the moment in Europe, and there's something happened recently here in the US with a paparazzi agency suing a celebrity because she used the photo of herself but didn't give them credit or pay them for it. So I think everyone just needs to become a little bit more aware and do your homework on your research on image copyright. You shouldn't be just grabbing a photo from someone on the internet and putting it on your feed. And if you do, you need to be aware that there's a risk associated with that. And the owner of that image is going to be within their legal rights to come after you. So make sure that if you're posting images which aren't completely and solely owned by you, that you're getting in touch with whoever owns those images, and just kind of like finding out exactly what the copyright is and making sure you're clear to use them.
Perfect. Yeah. I think a lot of people don't realize that there are agencies that handle photos and that they handle the licensing around photos, and that they have departments within their agency that are looking to see if those photos are being used without having paid the licensing fee.
Exactly. I think that image copyright, especially in the digital world, has been pretty lax over the last sort of 10 years, but regulation is getting tighter and tighter, and that's only going to be more so as we go forward.
Totally. And sometimes it's as simple as DMing someone. You know, if you see a picture in their feed and you like it, and you can shoot them a DM and ask for permission to use it, and sometimes they'll let you do that.
Yeah, a lot of the time everyone is happy to share for credit. And, you know, and if the answer is no, then you've saved yourself a potential problem down the road.
Totally. Yeah. So speaking of photo editing and all of those things, what programs do you like to use for photo editing? And are there any user-friendly or particularly fantastic apps that you recommend?
You know, I generally work with the Adobe suite, which I think you do too. Which the reason I love them is because they're very visually focused. So, you know, all of their products are completely based on being a visual. They're very visually intuitive. I use the desktop programs, but they also have sort of like Adobe Photoshop for your phone, which is a great thing to use if you're doing Instagram stories or just Instagram. You can do all of your editing. They have a bunch of different filters. They also have kind of graphic elements you can add. It's free. It's really easy. Just kind of play around with that. And then Canva is really great. A lot of influencers use Canva because it kind of like, again, it has a lot of different graphic elements you can bring into your photos. All of the kind of like the color schemes and everything. So yeah, there are a bunch of different programs.
Cool. Yeah, I do love Adobe. I know for even for this series, I have Adobe for like a Premiere, basically, which is Adobe editing suite for my phone. And so I edit these videos on that and then repost them into highlights, so I can put graphics in and I can change them up a little bit and smooth them out so they're not quite as rough as the live that you're seeing now.
They're very user-friendly.
Yes, they are. They're really visually user-friendly. And if you're used to using an iPhone or a Mac, it's an easy way to jump in. So awesome. So, okay, what are 3 tips that you can give our viewers to do when they're editing their photos?
Oh, okay. That's a fun question. So I guess it kind of it depends on your personal style, obviously, and everyone has a different style. But for me, I like to start with straight horizons. I can't make sure your horizons are nice and straight, people. It's really, really important. The second thing to do is add a vignette. It just really focuses the eye into the center of the image. There are a couple of different ways to do it, but most of your like Instagram has automatic ones, so, and most photo editing apps will have one you can throw in. And then the third tip I would say is when you're editing, think about especially on Instagram, think about the story again. I know I've been saying the word story a lot, but it's kind of like you can use your feed to create a really lovely story, and it can have like an identity. So instead of just having like all these random cute photos, you're developing this kind of story that people get engaged with, and that's how to really kind of like build great photos on Instagram.
But I think that story narrative is something that I keep coming back to in different parts of mastering digital, be it video, be it stories, be it Instagram. It's you are here to tell your story in a visual way. And so you need to outline that story, that narrative, and what that vibe is going to be. Because once you get your vibe in place and you make that very clear, you can parlay that into video. You can parlay that into your stories. You can parlay that into your pictures, and you're able to share that narrative with your community, and you're able to visually brand yourself so that when someone sees your content, they immediately know it's you.
Right, and that's how you kind of win business, is to have an identity.
Yeah, it is. It is how you win business. And if you're an influencer and you're looking to work with a brand, they want to know what your visual identity is. They want to see something beyond just a cute picture of you with a cup of coffee, and then the next picture is like you and your dog, and the third picture is like you're at the beach, but none of these are visually connected, and it's not telling a narrative. It's not giving them something that they can latch onto to marry with their own brand and their own visual story. So I think it's something that you're really looking to master, and it's one of the things that makes you marketable in Instagram.
And I think we've all got a story. It's kind of with all of us, so it's just like deciding what yours is and the one that you want to represent, and going with it.
Yeah, totally. So a lot of time we're shooting and editing photos on our iPhones. We're not necessarily in a studio with proper lighting and all of those things. And we may not even, I think a lot of people don't even own or maybe not own, but just don't carry around a larger, more robust camera and a lens package and all that kind of stuff, because
it's heavy.
It's heavy. It's cumbersome. And if you drop it, it's expensive. So you don't want to do that. So what are 2 or 3 things that we can all do to make the quality of our iPhone pictures better?
Okay, so when it comes to light, the technology that's being developed is getting better and better. Although the actual flash on most people's phones is still pretty suspect, actually. Apple, if you're listening, could you please work on that? But you can get a lot of kind of Bluetooth flashes now, which you just clip onto the edge of your phone. And if you're somewhere where you know it's going to be dark, I would definitely recommend having a look at those. All of the influencers I know use the Lumi case. So if you're taking selfies, then definitely that's a key tip. And then the last thing is, if you are kind of just your phone and you don't have any add-ons, then a couple of things you can do. When you're kind of selecting the part of your phone to choose the lighting, let's say kind of we're here and we select the bit in the middle, if you hold on to that, it will lock the light setting for where it is instead of suddenly kind of shifting as you move around. So that's really a great tip, to just kind of set the white balance in one place for your photos.
That's good. The other thing I would say is facing the light. So I think a lot of people, when you're near a window or you're outside, you're trying to turn to get so you're not in the light because you want to see the screen better. You're making yourself look like a crazy shadow person, like a crazy skeleton. So face the light. The light is your friend. The light is the thing that is going to erase your fine lines and wrinkles. It's going to brighten your face. It's going to make you look like you slept for a long time. Face the light. Do yourself a favor. I see that all the time. And then you do get the weird, because you didn't set the white balance on your phone because you weren't thinking about it, you are getting that weird shifting thing, and then it's like a shadow nightmare. And it's
I think what happens for a lot of people is, let's say you're stood in front of of a beautiful background, like looking out of a window, and you really want to show the other side of the window, but the problem is when you have your phone facing the window, your face is hardly able to see, and if you auto-correct that so you can see your face, then you're just stood in front of a big blinding white light. So
yeah, that's tough.
Face the light.
Yeah, face the light. Or step outside if you want to get the background. Because I think the other thing with windows, particularly modern windows, is they're treated and they have that filter on them. So a lot of them have kind of like a UV protective filter, so the UV rays aren't coming into your house and you aren't, getting sunburned if you're reading by a window, which is great, but for photography and for video, it's not as ideal because it can mess with the light and it can mess with the camera.
Yeah, definitely.
So either step outside or just face the window. All right. And so speaking of light and environment are super critical to the vibe and feel of any photo, right? But very often, and particularly when you're shooting yourself and you don't have the luxury of someone helping you out or, being on set somewhere, what are your kind of favorite tips or tricks to make a not ideal setting or situation work and look cool and look polished?
Okay, so first of all, when I'm shooting on my phone, there's a couple of apps that you can get that will just give you a lot more control over your environment. Like Hydra is really good, I think that springs to mind, and they allow you to control a lot more of the elements of your photo, like the ISO and the exposure and things. And then the second thing I think is don't be afraid to stage your environment, right? It's something that we've always done when we're on shoots. You'll go to somebody's office to shoot, a fashion designer, and they have a beautiful office, but you still need to stage elements of the background so that everything kind of like looks exactly perfect. Like, don't think what you see on the pages of Vogue really look like that.
It's so true.
So it was a set designer.
Yeah.
So be all the people on the crew that you need to be.
Yeah. I would say the biggest ones that I see regularly are not cleaning up behind you. So like you're in someone's office and their desk is covered in papers and there's like an old cup of coffee on the bookshelf and just like life, things happen. But for shooting, it's really important to clear it and to clear the set and to make sure everything in frame looks, like you said, exactly how you want it to look. And maybe it involves taking a couple flowers from a table in another room and bringing them in and dropping them in the background so there's a little bit of contrast and a pop of color. I would say something else that's helpful if you have the ability is to not shoot too close to the wall, to step away, give yourself a little bit of space between yourself and the wall. You kind of want to think about it in 3 planes. So it's like there's the wall, there's this empty hole, and then there's the subject. That empty hole is what makes the set feel bigger than it really is. So even if you're shooting in a corner or you're shooting in a really small office or like a bathroom or something, giving yourself a gap of space gives the illusion on camera that there's more space in that room than there really is. So it feels like you're in a bigger place than you actually are. And sometimes that space is only a couple of feet and it will work and you'll see a difference. Like if you have the person on camera step back and step forward, you'll see leaving that gap really helps and makes it feel bigger than it really is.
I'm going to try that. It's a good digital video tip.
Well, because I think we've shot in every closet and corner and conference room in Southern California. So people think that we have big budgets at big corporations, but surprise, we don't. All right, perfect. So in terms of like really giving yourself a leg up and getting a beautiful, usable piece of content, and you're on the fly, like you're walking around outside one day or, and you're just trying to gather content because the thing with social is you're constantly having to get content.
The pressure to be,
It's forever. So are there any things that you like to do, tricks that you like to use to help yourself out to I always try to shoot in the morning because the light's better, or I try to look for places as I'm walking around and stop and take a photo, or just...
one thing I'm doing is I'm always location scouting, so wherever I'm going, whatever I'm doing, I'm always kind of building a mental list of places that would be great to shoot for not everything obviously is going to be great for every purpose, but I have like a little mental list of great places to shoot in LA, so that's a really good starting point. I think secondly, time of day is really crucial, so if you're shooting on Hollywood Boulevard, then you probably don't want to be there kind of like about 4 o'clock in the afternoon or pretty much any time of day apart from 6 a.m. So definitely bear that in mind. And not just because of the light, but because of how crowded things are going to be. Another thing too, I would say is to just go ahead and start taking photos, start making content, because the more you do, the more you practice, the more you're going to develop your style, work out what your signature is, and just get better. So
totally.
So yeah, just do it.
Yeah. I mean, I think you just have to start somewhere. And it's true. The more you do it, the better you get, because you'll run into more hurdles and you'll have to cross those and you'll figure it out, and the next time you come across that same hurdle, it's not so bad. I'd say the other thing about finding a location and shooting on a location, in a big city it's a bigger deal than if you live in a smaller place, like a smaller community, but especially in LA and New York, notice of filming is a real thing. So they don't want you shooting without a permit from the city, which is very expensive. So a lot of times you run and gun, which is slang for just quickly taking a picture and then getting the F out of there. So I would say, like, it's easier to do that early in the morning because they aren't out looking for you at 6 a.m. And the light is really good because the sun's just coming up. So everything is kind of clean and you have that bright, that early morning kind of glow to everything. It's sort of like magic hour, but reversed into the morning. So instead of it being that golden glow, you get kind of a brighter, cheerier glow, and it's easier for you to get away with more.
Is the tip.
Yeah, get out of bed early, get it done, and go have a cup of coffee.
And the last thing I would say is that there are so many amazing free tutorials as far as how to take still photography on the internet at the moment. Like, just spend some time, sit down on a Saturday afternoon and listen to some.
Yeah, totally. And again, I mean, I feel like just getting out there and doing it is one of the best ways, because trial and error, the mastery of it, for sure. Well, Jacqui, where can all of our viewers find you?
Oh, well, I'm on Instagram, of course, Jacqui M. Lee, and I think all of my other contacts are on there, so it's Jacqui, Jacqui M. Lee.
Perfect. All right. Well, thank you guys for joining us, and thank you, Jacqui. This was so fun.
This was fun.
And we'll see you guys next Wednesday.